Okay, there will be several videos to supplement the in-class presentation of Fusion 360. The deliverable is to create a pod for the maglev. We'll do a discussion in the next video. This one is focused on creating the model for the body of the pod. And the submittal is for a screenshot or a picture of your finished pod model. And then the other portion of it is we'll stop at the scaling portion and outputting to an STL file and being able to verify that it will fit inside of the print envelope for the engineering. So the Canvas assignment should have all of those instructions and uh, locations, websites to be able to submit those items. All right, so in Fusion, we're going to, my screen is a little bit compressed because of the screen resolution. Which this is the best size for creating the YouTube videos. So under Create, let's start over here. We're in the design, and we want to create, and then we're going to create a form. And if you are using the cylinder or quad ball sphere, you will get slightly different results, but the techniques are largely the same. So clicking on the box, we are going to pick the sketch plane, start a location, and my tendency from the standard design extrude is to go ahead and enter those values. So I see that I am in inches. I'm thinking of this in terms of metric, so we don't want to enter any values here. I'm just going to zoom out a little bit more so that this can get pretty good size, 60 by 40. That might be a little too much. All right, so somewhere in there, when I click, if I enter the values in those boxes, then I don't get this box to pop up. So the length I want to be 2 meters, and 2m will take the place of inches, and it will convert it to inches until we change the units. The number of faces on the length defaults to 2. I'm going to update that to 4. The direction can stay one side. So let's see. On the direction, if we tell it that it's symmetric, that would be a total of 4 meters. And then, or no, the total is 2 meters. And then the width of minus 50, oh, that's still in inches, 1.5 meters. So the inches are going to mess with me there. And then the height is 2 meters. All right, so default is set to none. And for this example, I'm going to allow it to do the length symmetry. And when you click on that, it is showing the green line as to the edge that it's going to be symmetric about. All right, so I'm going to look at this from the top real quick and just kind of see if I can verify the scale. So that's looking, oh, these are still in inches, so that would be about 1 meter that way and 1 meter that way for a total of 2 meters, and then 30 and 30. So since these are inch scales, I'm going to go ahead and accept that. And if you are in inches and want to work in inches, that's fine. I'm going to switch over to meters. And now I can see that I have on the grid 1, 1, and about 3/4. So let's go ahead with the isometric view. And I think the grid is going to kind of uh, get in the way a little bit. So on the bar across the bottom, the grids and snaps, we can turn the layout grid off. And that puts us into our view. So if you did not get the mirror symmetry across this line, we're going to add symmetry the other direction by selecting two faces. All right, so if you didn't get the one on the length, then you would select these two faces and then select these two faces, and that would give you symmetry in both directions. All right, what this is going to do is give us the ability to modify and change the directions. So each of these faces, each of these edges represent a T-spline. And those T-splines and their associated nodes are going to be able to change the overall shape. And because of symmetry, we want our pod to be kind of aesthetically pleasing, balanced. So top to bottom, I'm not so concerned about. And if the bottom does stay relatively flat, that will help with the 3D print. So let's escape out of the orbit. All right, so when we pick a point, we get this. There's a lot of items that is basically the translation, the rotation, and the scaling all at the same time. We can filter out to where we're just translating. And you can play with the other ones. I want to keep this fairly simple, straightforward, so that we can just talk about the geometry. So picking on a point is going to be local at that point. Picking on an edge, notice this one highlights in yellow. I think the point did too, but I wasn't paying attention. So that's going to work more across the entire edge, and picking on a face is going to expand that topology to include all those items. So there is no history associated to this, so as I push pull, if I find something I don't like or I want to try again, we have the option of hitting the undo, or usually it's Control Z. If I get it too wild, I will probably save this and be able to come back to it, but more than likely we would just delete the form, add a new one, and try again. So those are kind of our options. So let's take a look at what it happens when you pull on the point. It kind of becomes a little bit sharper, a little indent. So if I do a Control Z, that takes me back to the undo, takes me back to the previous state. And then picking on an edge, notice that it's a little less pointy. And I will Control Z. And let's go with the bottom face, and notice this is now doing more of the rounded geometry. So I kind of like that. I think for the size, that's okay. You can push and pull these as much as you want, and we'll use the orbit to kind of see what everything looks like. And the main thing is that everybody's is going to be different depending on how much you pushed, pulled, stretched, did all these things. So let's go with an edge and see how that modifies, makes it a little bit sharper. And then if I go to the point, it's kind of getting a little bit of a crease there. So let's go ahead and see what that does. This is where we went to the inspection. And if we look at the curvature and pick the body, we're going to be able to see those areas of curvature. And then in the zebra analysis, we can see kind of like the gradients on a weather map. There's more curvature where these are tighter together, and less curvature where the lines, the separations are further apart. All right, so that looks pretty good. The other one that we want to take a look at in the modify is the subdivide. All right, so there's a lot of items in here that we can do, but we want to stay on the simpler side. So if I pick these two faces, it's going to subdivide along this edge. And we'll do the simple, doesn't have to be exact. And I mentioned in the presentation that less is more. Right? You may think that having more control points, having more of these faces is a good thing. And in certain cases, being able to go very discrete on these locations, it will be an advantage. But starting out, we want this geometry to stay fairly simple. So on the modify and our selection, I only have to select one side. I can go along and pick any of those edges, and we'll see because of the symmetry, they're highlighting the other faces. But I want multiples. I don't want to pull just that one section. So if I hold down the control button, I can go along that edge, and that gives me geometry on both sides. So I want to make this a little bit wider at the base and see what that looks like. All right, so I'm getting something that looks strange but doable. And my edge is still selected, so if I hit escape or double click, and then we can go back to the isometric. All right, and I've been doing the orbit, but you can also grab onto the cube and set the isometric or the view that way. All right, so push pull, use your creativity, find something that you like and would be interested in 3D printing. If this went fairly quick, so if you did 2 or 3 of them, it would not be that big of a deal. We can save this, and I need to figure out which project I'm in. Okay, so I went to my Maglev folder that I had previously created. If you haven't made one yet, we can do that over on the data. So this is going to be pod revision. Oh, I'm probably up to 3 now, so let's go with that as the group. And let's see, I need to hit enter because the OK is just off of my screen. All right, so if you haven't created a folder yet, there are my projects. We can do new folder, and once you make the maglev, this is going to accumulate all of your items. So the various attempts and different geometries are going to show up here. All right, so I want to maximize that screen space, so hitting the grid in the upper left is going to expand the data panel and then reduce it. All right, so at this point, I'm reasonably happy. I'm ready to put in some solid geometry. So this is where we switch back. We finished the form. If I want to do more to the form, I can right-click and edit it, and we're back into this group. The symmetry will stay in place until I remove it. And if we clear the symmetry, it's going to clear all of it. And let's see, isolate. So isolate would sounds like it would do the faces. I haven't tried that one yet. So, but you can manipulate the current symmetry if you need to, and do a little bit more. So, one of the things with the 3D print that I discovered in the last time we did this project is that the shelling this out first made the 3D print. It did not like the thin walls that even if we put this at a 10% infill, it's going to be much more printable, have a much higher success rate. than trying to print all of those thin, fine details. So I want to do an emboss, deboss to set the doors, the windows, and then extrude for the headlights. And then we'll tinker around a little bit more with our geometry. So we'll open up a sketch. I'm going to put it on the front face. And I'm going to go ahead and extend this out a little bit further for the example. So 1 meter would be fine by the 1.7. At 1.8 was probably okay. And then centering it. So let's escape out of that. Now position it. Now the grid is on again, which is why it's snapping. And I want to kind of fine position it a little bit more. All right, so I'm going to leave this underdefined at this stage. We're not going to to that detail. I would like to put some rounds, put some corner detail. So if we go to 0.1, that's still pretty good size. It's going to tell me that constraints or dimensions were removed, which is fine. And that gives me enough to finish the sketch. Oh, missed one. Let's go one more. So that's just going to give me a second dimension down here. Now, if I don't want that dimension, if I want to change this, I would just delete one of those, and we can see the equal signs and all of the other constraints. And once those get annoying, we're going to set that to equal, and then escape to clear out of this constraint. I can come over to the sketch palette and clear the constraints, and we're back to seeing something that's a little more manageable. All right, so when I finish this sketch, under the Create, we're going to do an emboss, and this is going to be preferable to the cut extrude that's going to remove a lot of material. So the sketch profile is on the face. We want to make sure that the tangent chain is deselected. We'll go into the orbit, and I can see the geometry a little bit better. And we'll escape out of the orbit. Make sure that your faces are selected, and because this spans the top and the bottom surfaces, I need to add. Oh, I guess I got enough of that one. I was thinking maybe it would have to do that as a transition as well. And for the deboss, it's just going to be a negative value. So 0.2, we want that to show up reasonably well. And it's showing up in red instead of gray, so it's going into the geometry. And the horizontal is going to allow it to move side to side, well, at least until it loses the geometry, the vertical up and down until it loses the geometry, and rotation. All right, so we can kind of manipulate the sketch, but if I get it too far off, I'm just going to go back and put the zeros back in, hit OK. All right, so one more time on the other side. Let's make sure I'm in the orbit. Okay, I have the orbit. Not sure what it's selecting there. All right, we'll go this way then. All right, so I need to see that sketch, or I would prefer to see that sketch. So expanding it out, showing the sketch, because after it's applied to the feature, it's going to automatically hide it. So the sketch profile again, the faces, we get the warning, we pick one of the adjacent faces, keep our same 0.2, and we have that as good. Now I can hide that sketch. So I didn't put a window, a front and back window on this from the presentation, but if we were, to do something like that, we would be able to put that sketch in. It would still be an emboss.